Okay, so let me get going. What I'm going to start with is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, if you're not familiar with him, stop sharing. Let me tell you about Peter Thiel. He's a billionaire. He's one of the tech investor billionaires out there. Just looking at Forbes page. I always like to, as you know, uh, whenever we're going to talk about someone that's on an interview or an article they wrote, I think it's really good to take a moment and just step back and get a little bit of their bio, where they are, where they were, where they are, because that's part of the evolution of our culture and the way people are moving, like somebody like Zuckerberg or Musk or okay. So Peter Thiel, and it's pronounced like Teel, even though it's spelled Thiel. Okay, Forbes has him investor, a founders fund. Okay, he's worth currently real time net worth $13.5 billion. Crazy. Okay, he was a PayPal co-founder. He was among his investments are Stripe and SpaceX. He also co-founded the CIA-backed big data startup Plantier and went public via direct listing in 2020. He's one of the first big investors in Facebook. He sold his he left the board in 2022. And this is interesting. His Thiel Foundation gives a small number of young entrepreneurs $100,000 over 2 years to skip college and build their own company. All right. Now, what's really important about Peter Thiel, and I'm going to bring this article up and share this one with you, okay, is that before we get into the article that he wrote for the Financial Times, I want to talk about something in 2016. Okay. So 8 years ago, let me make sure we're sharing with you there. We are sharing. Okay. So here we go. So Peter Thiel, this is in October 31st, Halloween of 2016. Okay. 8 years ago. Now Musk, boom, on board, and Zuckerberg's moving over and Bezos is praising him and even Bill Gates wants a meeting, right? Everybody wants to get on board with Trump now. So we got to acknowledge people get there early, okay? Peter Thiel, 2016, 8 years ago, before Trump's first election win. Peter Thiel stands out in Silicon Valley for support of Donald Trump. Okay, this is worth. It's important to go back and get the big picture here. Okay, so when he talks today, 8 years later, I think this carries some weight. Okay, just like we can leave people's past behind that change and evolve in a natural, organic, true, real, authentic sense. We also have to acknowledge when people stay firm or see things way ahead of time. And it's not surprising that somebody who, with the foresight of an investor like Thiel, saw something with Trump. Let's see, October 31st, 2016. It's good also to read this article written back then. It's not an article written today about then. It's the actual article from 8 years ago, just to remember where we are. Okay. There he is. He looks a lot younger, doesn't he? All right. Silicon Valley is a politically liberal place. Let me get your credentials here. This is from NPR, and it's written by Laura Seidel. Okay. Silicon Valley is a politically liberal place, and that is reflected in where people are sending their money this election season. 95% of contributions from tech employees to the presidential campaigns have gone to Hillary Clinton, according to CrowdPack, a group that tracks political donations. But one well-known outlier has caused a lot of friction in the Valley. Remember this. Trump was a joke, an absolute joke. Hillary was basically going to be coronated, right, to follow Obama. Peter Thiel is part of what many people in the Valley call the PayPal Mafia, a group of investors who got very rich by helping to fund PayPal. Thiel was also an early investor in Facebook, and he continues to fund startups. In the left-leaning Silicon Valley, he's a self-identified libertarian who supported Rand Paul. Thiel's outside-the-box thinking is part of what many thought made him a smart investor. Then he came out in support of Donald Trump, and that was a bridge too far for some. All right, I'm not going to go into this article more, this 8-year-old article, but it is really important before we read the next one that was written a few days ago to understand where Thiel's coming from. He was on board. He spoke at the convention, the 2016 convention. Okay. There, Financial Times. This is what he wrote. Let me see. Bring it up. This is a good piece. Good piece because it talks about the bigger picture involved of how important it is. 12 o'clock. There goes the smartwatch. All right. Financial Times. Sharing with you. You can see it. Great. A time for truth and reconciliation. Trump's return to the White House augurs the apocalypse of the ancient regime's secrets. Okay. He uses the Greek word. Okay. Apocalypse. And for the sake of the article, I'm just going to keep saying apocalypse. Apokálypsis, I think, is the correct pronunciation. Peter Thiel. Okay. In 2016, President Barack Obama told his staff that Donald Trump's election victory was not the apocalypse. By any definition, he was correct. But understood in the original sense of the Greek word apocalypsis, meaning unveiling, Obama could not give the same reassurance in 2025. Trump's return to the White House augurs the apocalypsis of the ancient regime's secrets. The new administration's revelations need not just justify vengeance. Reconstruction can go hand in hand with reconciliation. But for reconciliation to take place, there must first be truth. Big, nice first paragraph. Okay? He's a good writer. So Barack Obama says, when Trump wins in 2006, it's not the apocalypse. And he means it in the ordinary pedestrian use of the word, of the saying, right? It's not the end of the world. In other words, we say it's not the end of the world, it's not the apocalypse. Okay? But the Greek meaning of apocalypse, right, like the book in the Bible, the apocalypse or revelation, it means an unveiling. And that's what apocalypse is. It will be the unveiling of God's face. God will come, Jesus will come back. It'll be a face-to-face encounter with your creator, an unveiling, what we see right now in shadows, and truth is obscure and abstract. Where is it? Everything will be crystal clear, including the judgment upon of yourself, of you, your judgment of how you've lived your life. So that's the apocalypse, the unveiling, the revelation of reality, true reality. Okay, not a virtual reality, not a fictional. The reality at the core of its being can't be any more real, more authentic, is the revelation, the apocalypse. And he's saying, this is good. But understood in the original sense of the Greek word, meaning unveiling, Obama could not give the same reassurance in 2025. So it is an apocalypse. 2025 is an apocalypse, not in the sense of it's the end of the world, but in the sense that it's an unveiling. This itself is why I do the show. It's smart. It's a beautiful play. Not a play. It's a beautiful use of the word and taking the ordinary use of the idiom, the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. It's not the apocalypse, with the Greek meaning, which brings us to the Bible, which is so you can't get out. Do you see when I talk about Western culture and classic liberal, Greco-Roman classic liberal, Judeo-Christian understanding of our culture, and whether you are a believer in the Judeo-Christian spiritual sense or a follower of Western literature, a lover of the Bible, you can't exist in our society and speak and contribute in a meaningful way without understanding the jargon. Okay? We use these expressions. And here's Peter Thiel. Okay? Obama cannot give that reassurance. Trump's return to the White House augurs the apocalypse of the ancient regime's secrets. So basically, it's an unveiling of what's been going on. It's a discovery, a revelation. The new administration's revelations need not justify vengeance. Reconstruction, beautiful. We have to reconstruct. They dismantled the original intent of the United States, the Constitution. Now you have to reconstruct it. okay, can go hand in hand with reconciliation, peace, new relationship, new alliances, right? A team of rivals, build bridge building. But for reconciliation to take place, there must first be truth. I mean, there's so much, it's amazing, right? But you can't have peace. And think about the relationship of the individual. Can you have peace with somebody that you have a fundamental disagreement, argument, dislike, battle, personal relationship, war with somebody? In order to have peace, you have to have the truth. Okay? In order to have reconciliation, forgiveness, you must acknowledge the act. If you did something wrong, forgiveness is a huge process. There's steps in forgiveness. For example, if you have done something wrong, right, and you won't admit it, well, you can't have peace. That's why confession, the sacrament in Catholic terms, is either called penance, reconciliation, or confession. 3 different names, same thing. Reconciliation is emphasizing the peace that takes place. Okay, penance recognizes the need for like a public an action, whether it's private or public or with the person involved or God. There's an action to repair. Okay, or confession, which is to admit. Okay, and if there's an act that violates the truth, you have to first admit that an act took place that was unjust or illegal or wrong, morally wrong, ethically wrong. Then the person involved has to admit that they performed that action, therefore were wrong. Show remorse. I wish if I could do it, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't have done that. It was wrong. But I can't go back in time. Therefore, I repent now. I change my direction toward the truth. I offer penance, which could be just the act of the confession itself is a penance, a sigh. It could be a reparation in the sense of repairing the relationship by offering an object or an exchange. Okay, and reconciliation is the other person accepts, and there's peace. Of course, with God, when you reconcile, He always accepts if it's sincere. So the reconciliation always takes place, independent of what the other party, human party, does. But Thiel's talking about reconciliation here between parties, between either groups or individuals. The apocalypse is the most peaceful means of resolving the old guard's war on the internet, a war the internet won. Okay, my friend and colleague Eric Weinstein calls the pre-internet custodians of secrets the Distributed Idea Suppression Complex. That's a good one. Distributed Idea Suppression Complex, DISC. The media organizations, bureaucracies, universities, and government-funded NGOs that traditionally delimited public conversation. In hindsight, the internet had already begun our liberation from the DISC prison under the prison death of financier and child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in 2019. Almost half of Americans polled that year mistrusted the official story that he died by suicide, suggesting that DISC had lost total control of the narrative. This reminds me of that article that we read in The Tablet, right, by David Samuels, about the control that was over people's minds and the thought, the public opinion, the control of public opinion for so long was held by this small group, and it's being busted open. It may be too early to answer the internet's questions about the late Mr. Epstein, but one cannot say the same of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. 65% of Americans still doubt that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Like an outlandishly postmodern detective story, we have waited 61 years for a denouement while the suspects, Fidel Castro, 1960s mafiosi, the CIA's Allen Dulles, gradually die. The thousands of classified government files on Oswald may or may not be red herrings, but opening them up for public inspection will give America some closure. We cannot wait 6 decades, however, to end the lockdown on a free discussion about COVID-19. In subpoenaed emails from Anthony Fauci's senior advisor, David Morins, we learned that National Institutes of Health, Apokálypsis, hid their correspondence from Freedom of Information Act scrutiny. Nothing, wrote Boccaccio in his medieval plaque epic, The Decameron. These are tough words. I'm being challenged here. Is so indecent that I cannot be said to another person if the proper words are used to convey it. In that spirit, Morens and former chief U.S. medical advisor Fauci will have the chance to share some indecent facts about our own recent plague. Did they suspect that COVID spawned from U.S. taxpayer-funded research or an adjacent Chinese military program? Why did we fund the work of EcoHealth Alliance, which sent researchers into remote Chinese caves to extract novel coronaviruses? Is quote-unquote gain of function research a byword for a bioweapons program? And how did our government stop the spread of such questions on social media? Our First Amendment frames the rules of engagement for domestic fights over free speech. But the global reach of the internet tempts its adversaries into a global war. Can we believe that a Brazilian judge banned X without American backing? In a tragicomic perversion of the Monroe Doctrine, were we complicit in Australia's recent legislation requiring age verification for social media users, the beginning of the end of internet anonymity? Did we muster up even 2 minutes criticism of the UK, which has arrested hundreds of people a year for online speech triggering, among other things, quote, annoyance, inconvenience, or needless anxiety, close quote? We may expect no better than from Orwellian dictatorships in East Asia and Eurasia, but we must support a free internet in Oceania. Darker questions still emerge in these dusky final weeks of our interregnum. Venture capitalist Mark Andreessen recently suggested on Joe Rogan's podcast that the Biden administration debanked crypto entrepreneurs. How closely does our financial system resemble a social credit system? Were an IRS contractor's illegal leaks of Trump's tax records anomalous, or should Americans assume their right to financial privacy hinges on their politics? And one can speak of a right to privacy at all when Congress conserves Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Acts, under which the FBI conducts tens of thousands of warrantless searches of Americans' communications. South Africa confronted its apartheid history with a formal commission, but answering the questions above with piecemeal classifications would befit both Trump's chaotic style and our internet world, which possesses and propagates short packets of information. The first Trump administration shied away from declassifications because it still believed in the right-wing deep state of an Oliver Stone movie. This belief has faded. Our ancient regime, like the aristocracy of pre-revolutionary France, thought the party would never end. 2016 shook their historic faith in the arc of the moral universe, but by 2020, they hoped to write Trump off as an aberration. In retrospect, 2020 was their aberration. The rear guard action of a struggling regime and its Studeberg ruler. There will be no reactionary restoration of the pre-internet past. The future demands fresh and strange ideas. New ideas might have saved the old regime, which barely acknowledged, let alone answered, our deepest questions. The causes of the 50-year slowdown in scientific and technological progress in the U.S., the racket of crescendoing real estate prices, and the explosion of public debt. Perhaps an exceptional country could have continued to ignore such questions. But as Trump understood in 2016, America is not an exceptional country. It is no longer even a great one. Identity politics endlessly relitigates ancient history. The study of recent history, to which the Trump administration is now called, is more treacherous and more important. The apocalypse cannot resolve our fights over 1619, but it can resolve our fights over COVID-19. It would not adjudicate the sins of our first rulers, but the sins of those who govern us today. The internet will not allow us to forget those sins, but with the truth, it will not prevent us from forgiving. Wow. He really calls it out. Okay, that last paragraph, here we go. Identity politics endlessly relitigates ancient history. The study of recent history, to which the Trump administration is now called, is more treacherous and more important. The apocalypse cannot resolve our fights over 1619, right? A reference to the rewriting of history, that America was founded on slavery, and we can't, in a sense, that fight can only be that's not going to be solved by what he's talking about. But it can resolve the fights over COVID-19 because we have the data, we have the emails. We just have to look at them. Okay, it will not get rid of the sins of our first rulers. In other words, the sins of slavery, but the sins of those who govern us today. The internet will not allow us to forget those sins, but with the truth, it would not prevent us from forgiving. So, in other words, we can have reconciliation. It's really real smart, deep, smart piece. In a nutshell, we can have reconciliation with these parties, but the truth is required. And what Obama said is not the end of the world. Trump's election in 2016 is now a true apocalypse, that it's an unveiling and a revealing of the facts, the possibility of seeing the case of these, of especially something like COVID-19, and then the parties involved can reconcile if the truth is acknowledged. All right, so Peter Thiel is a good one. Deep. I started with a deep one, huh? Okay. Let me just move on.